Hello and welcome. It's been quite a while since I've made a video, but we're back. So maybe you've come across this video because you're planning on traveling for the first time, or maybe you've done your fair share of traveling. Either way, I'm gonna share with you what I've learned after almost a year of solo travel. I've been to 10 countries so far, I cannot believe it, and I've learned a lot of valuable things along the way. I have them written down here in front of me, and speaking of that, I recommend that you get a pen and paper as well to take notes, because these are going to be some pretty valuable tips. So I've divided these up into tips for before you leave and tips for while you're traveling. So let's get started with tips for before you leave. So let's get started with tip number 1, and that is your passport. If you're planning on doing international travel, I recommend getting your passport at least 2 to 3 months before you depart. Okay, my second tip for you is to do some basic research on the country you're planning on traveling to. Now, you want to figure out what types of visas you're able to get. Usually a free visa, which involves no paperwork, allows you to stay in the country from around 30 to 90 days. Here in Ecuador, it's 90 days, which is pretty nice. You can also get a tourist visa, which allows you to stay a little longer. You also want to research the weather. I know when I got here to Quito, Ecuador, it was a lot colder and drier than I expected for being on the equator. And that's because I forgot to research the elevation. It's almost 10,000 feet here. You also want to research some of the local language, and this means that you should learn a little bit of it, at least for going grocery shopping and getting around on the bus and things like that. You also want to research the cost of living. I found that no matter if you stay in the city or outside of the city, you can pretty much always find cheap housing. You also want to research some local attractions or some tourist attractions. There might be a free one that's really cool that you might want to check out, so definitely research those. Last thing you want to do some research on is transportation. You want to see if the country has Uber or Grab. Pretty much all countries have taxis. My next tip for you is to pack light. If you want to check out my packing video for before I left, you can click right here. Some things I recommend packing are rain gear, some warm clothes, especially for the airport and plane because those places can get pretty cold. You want to pack a first aid kit because you never know when you'll run into an emergency. And some pen and paper, which I'm using now for this video, because you never know if you'll want to take some notes, and especially if your phone dies, you might want to write something down as well. Next tip I have for you is to notify your bank on what countries you're planning on traveling to, and this just comes down to walking into your bank and telling them that you're planning on traveling, and they'll most likely know what to do. My next tip for you is to check multiple websites for cheap flights. There are so many out there, but some of the best ones and the ones that I use are Skyscanner and Google Flights. Those are really useful. All right, moving on to my next tip, and that is to always have proof of onward travel. You never know what airline or airport is going to ask for this, and what I'm talking about is just any form of evidence that you will be leaving the country before your visa expires. So if you don't like to plan too far in advance like I do and be more spontaneous, you can use a website called Expedia, which has refundable flights. And so what you want to do is book a flight out of your destination country before your visa expires, and then you want to look for the word refundable next to the flight. Make sure you're sent the actual ticket with the flight number on it, and then once you enter your destination country and go through customs, you want to cancel your flight, and make sure you do this before 24 hours passes. There are also flight ticket rental sites, which I don't know much about, but you can look into that too. All right, that's it for my tips for before you leave. Now we're moving on to while you're actually there. Now, if you use a phone like I do, I'm pretty sure you do, then I recommend buying a local SIM card once you land in the country. Now, you can get these in the airport pretty much all the time, and also at malls nearby. You want to also make sure to unlock your phone so it can accept foreign SIM cards. You do this by just going into your carrier's store where you live. And if you want to keep your number that you have back home, you may need to pay a little extra, and you want to talk to your carrier about that. All right, my next tip for you while you're there is to stay calm in stressful situations. People are always willing to help you no matter where you are, and you'll be surprised by the number of people who speak English around the world. Next, I recommend staying in hostels where you can meet other like-minded travelers and like-minded people and also make friends. You don't have to stay in a lot of hostels, but I definitely recommend trying it out once or twice. Moving on to the next one. This one's closely related to the last one, which is put your phone down and talk to people. I've been in many hostels where people are just lying on their bed on their phone and never interacting, and it's a shame. We're all longing for human connection, no matter how deep. No matter if it's small talk or deep conversation, it all counts. Okay, my next tip for you is to document your travels. Not everything, but at least some moments, including the mundane, like walking down the street or sitting on the bus. This will prove its value later on, trust me. I encourage you to take videos, photos, and write in your journal, because in case one of these things is lost, you always have a way to remember your trip. Next is to try the local food. Most of the fast food chains you have back home will always be there and will always be around. And a lot of the time I see travelers going to these restaurants when there's a bunch of local food around, and it's a real shame. I definitely recommend trying the fruit because it's perishable and you can't really get it anywhere else, and it won't really taste as good anywhere else, and especially in tropical areas. So I definitely recommend trying the fruit. And last but not least, don't forget to enjoy the moment. Being grateful is so important in every aspect of life, and always remember that you're so lucky to be able to travel and to experience new areas of the world. Alright, that's all my tips. If I didn't share something with you that you wanted to find out, chances are you'll learn it for yourself, because traveling is probably the most valuable learning experience. Anyway, peace, much love, and happy traveling.